Hey guys, my name is Moon and welcome back for more Witch on the Holy Night. So last episode we met our main characters Aoko and Sojiro, right? She toured him around school for 3 hours. Unbelievable, right? And then he nearly jumped outside the window as well. So last time I was talking about the graphical bugs, I guess. We got in my version, right? In my Let's Play. So I've switched to the Switch version now. So we're not gonna have any more of those graphical bugs. And last episode as well, if you notice that there was I guess a scene in the beginning, right? That they were showing the credits, the writers, all that stuff, and there was a nice music there, right? So I cut that off because for some reason, it did not record that part. It was just black screen the whole way. So yeah, that was one of the reasons why I just went for the Switch version now, so we don't have any problems going forward, right? So yeah, let's just continue the Let's Play. Let's go. Aoko did not stop by the faculty room before heading home. While Mr. Yamasiro's offer to drive her home was tempting, she decided it would ultimately be far more satisfying to ruin his day just as he had hers. She walked as quietly as she could toward the entrance and opened her bright red umbrella. As she had predicted that morning, the rain was waning in the afternoon. At this rate, it would probably cease completely in an hour or so. The distant sunshine would likely have reached her by the time she arrived home.
ま、それも悪くないか。
She shrugged her shoulders in resignation. She neither liked nor disliked the rain, but she found herself enjoying her walk home with her red umbrella in hand. The teachers at Mizaki High School weren't fond of bright colors, so Aoko's red umbrella was an unusual sight. A ghost story about how the umbrella was once pure white had been making the rounds, but it featured Aoko instead of a ghost. It was with that umbrella that she made her way toward Mizaki Station. The private Misaki High School got its name from the town of the same name. The area was once a sprawl of farmland and woodland, but rapid growth over the last 10 years had led to the unprecedented modernization. There were some who fought to preserve Misaki's natural treasures.
残すことには賛成ですが、それでは残すだけになってしまうでしょう。
With those words, the mayor snuffed out the voices of the minority and ushered in a long-term plan for a new urban city development. More than enough funds for the urban development were collected, and the unassuming town of Mizaki became the largest municipality of Mizaki City in merely 10 years, even though it lacked the modernity of neighboring Yashirogi or the elegance of Mizaki Hills.
それも当然よね。どういじくっても、もともとが山中の宿場町だし、山ごと切り崩すって言うんなら別だけど。
Urbanization had been contained to the lowlands around the station, with most of the hills and mountains still standing as they did 10 years prior. But yeah, look at this though. You see a big city, right? And then behind it is just nature, right? The exhaustion of funds succeeded in protecting the old Mizaki where the citizens could not. It became a truly odd suburban town, welcoming an increasingly urban population with its vestiges of the old country charm. Mizaki High School was a private school established long before the town's current state. The original campus, built 50 years ago, was located high up in the mountains, making its current location its second incarnation. The path to the old grounds was remote, steep, and also well trodden by animals. For these reasons, among the others, Misaki High School had been shuttered until almost 20 years ago when it received a donation from a department store chain that allowed for the construction of a new campus in the city. And thus, Misaki High School reopened its doors, the old Woodland campus, forgotten. In fact, most of the students attending Misaki High School were not from Misaki at all. The hardy, rustic people of this country town preferred prefectural schools to private ones. What is the difference though? Prefectural schools or private ones? Like public and private, is that it? Truth be told, Aoko herself was one of them. All she had wanted after junior high was to move to Tokyo, where she hoped to spend her days enjoying live music on her way to entering a public university. But her hopes were dashed with her sister's departure, so here she was, walking alone in a town with only a red umbrella to keep her company on what should have been a day off.
思い返してみると、私の人生ってなんか災難続きっぽい。
But I mean, personally, I kind of like this vibe, I guess, of the city like this. You have the urban, modern style, but then you have the older one, right, as well. Like, it's a mix, right? I think I like that much more. Her frustration evaporated into the cold December air.
でもま、いっか。退屈だけはしないわけだし。
Yeah, like look at this. You can see the nature still, right? Sure, there are a lot of houses, pretty much cramped up, right? But it's nice to see nature. Especially, for example, when you're going home, going to school like this. With those words, her mood brightened a bit as she left the school in her wake. The busier part of town met her at the bottom of the gently sloping road. Misaki's train station was brand new. Unique queue. Once looking no prettier than an abandoned factory, it had been renovated into a multi-purpose structure with a huge department store on its east and west side. When the department stores first opened, Aoko and her friends had been impressed with their modern feel, but in time, the stores too became dated. She had no shopping to do today, so she passed them by. What she really wanted to do was rest at a cafe, but she fought the urge knowing her roommate would never let her hear the end of it if she frittered away her money. Okay. What happened? Slow-mo now. She looked back and blinked. For just a moment, she could have sworn she had seen someone suspicious in a red dress out of the corner of her eye. It must have been her imagination. The sixth sense chill was experiencing down her spine was a familiar one at this point. She continued her walk home, brushing off the event as if it had never happened. In time, the chill faded and all that was left was the sounds of the town. She sighed heavily. Had she imagined it? Even if it had all been in her head, she was far from comfortable with the feeling that still lingered.
夏場の方ってもう少しこう。
She grumbled under her breath. But yeah, does she think that someone is following her?
波乱万丈、商売繁盛、諸行無常と。そうそう、忙しさに愚痴を言っても始まらないわ。
Unfortunately, summer and bugs go hand in hand. She could see how bugs could be drawn to all the sweet fruit. She gonna go to a restaurant, I mean. Rank with grease and heat, the kitchen was closed for the time being. The lunch rush had come and gone, but one last battle remained. Dinner time. Only after the evening chaos could the kitchen crew remove their white armor and call it a day. In the midst of the war zone was a lone newcomer.
これ着るんですか?
Okay, let me turn up this voice. Yeah, max it out. Let's just max the voice out. His voice was uneasy, betraying how new he was.
気持ちはわかる。俺もどうかと思うけど、店長の言うことだから、もう笑顔で乗り越えてくれ。これも商店街の明日のためなんだとよ。本気で申し訳ないんだが、雨も止んだし、なんとか行ってきてくれないか？無事帰ってきたら晩飯おごってやっから。
Okay, so I guess we're with Sojiro right now. His bright orange coworker claps his hand together as if to beg for forgiveness, as it saddled him with this unreasonable task. Also, this is his part-time job. Okay. He's working a restaurant. 10 years ago, Misaki City was a town of farm and woodland. But everything had changed. The front of the station was now lined with tall, multi-story buildings, and the residential areas were similarly full of apartment complexes. The once rustic scenery around the station had long become a thing of past. Shiro Inuzuka was the only place in the city that still contained vestiges of the old town, a pocket of the past inside an urban jungle. The road extended up a conspicuously high hill to an old residential district far from the hustle and bustle of the train station. Long ago, it had been considered unwise to build on high ground, so nobody lived above a certain elevation. But in Japan though, right? I guess you would want to live in, I guess, much higher ground, especially when earthquakes happen. I mean, usually earthquakes happen in Japan, right? And then tsunamis as well. So, if you're living there, I guess it's much better if your house is in a much higher place, right? Shiro Nozuka is sitting as it did at the top of a hill in the middle of town was no exception to that convention and had no residence to speak of. The asphalt continued for some time, eventually giving way to a mountain road that was swallowed into the cover of the trees. A lone vending machine stood to mark the boundary between the town and beyond. Even the children knew that there was nothing beyond the new playground and development that so enthralled them. Well, that was not entirely true. There was nothing besides the haunted house. Haunted house. Aoko Aozaki traversed the long slope. Below her, she could see the whole of Misaki. The symmetrical town looked like a miniature set from this height. It would look like a painting if there had been a sea next to it, but unfortunately, Misaki City was very much landlocked. While it was overcast at the moment, the scene was quite breathtaking on clear evenings. The view was the one thing that made the artist's climb worthwhile, and today, she had been denied even that.
雨の日は自転車も使えないし、1日に2回ぐらいバスでも通ってくれないもんかな、ほんと。
Yeah, why doesn't she have a bike at least, right? Yeah, it looks like her house is so far away. Aoko had been using this road to get to school for almost 2 years now, but the journey had never gotten easier. Maybe she just wanted some exercise, right? That's why she's walking.
鍵閉まったまま？アリス、まだ帰ってきてないんだ。
Alice. I guess, yeah, Alice got mentioned last time, right? Maybe I just brushed it off, but I think Alice got mentioned. With a weary shrug as she put her hand on the rusty iron fence. Quietly. Sorry. The heavy gate swung open as if to welcome her home. There sits atop that hill a haunted house. That is how the story much shared around town used to begin. Isn't this like copyrighted music? Like I think I've heard this music from other stuff. Oh my god. We'll see. But fresh rumors about the house had sprung to life almost as fast as the town's modernization. Despite being dilapidated and abandoned for many years, lights can be seen inside the house at night. An angry murder crowd often gathers atop the hill before mysteriously vanishing. Children get lost in the fog, never to be seen again. Late at night, a shrieking sound can be heard all the way to the town. This particular piece of slander was the one Aoko wished to discredit the most. The final rumor was of an eye-catching luxury car that sometimes made its way up and down the hill. The rumors spread and grew day by day. And while they grew, the house that everyone thought had rotted away was restored over the recent years. Deep in the wood, on top of a hill, no one dared to approach. Like a ruin shrouded from view even on the brightest of days. So the relic at a time, a building from a fairy tale. The house? But the house is quite beautiful though. There's a lot of, I guess, vines and stuff though, but it is beautiful. Was a Kuonji, how do you say that? Kuonji mansion. Everyone in town knew about the witch's house on the hill. The unabashedly haunted house where Aoko Aozaki resided for reasons unknown. Needless to say, it was not really haunted. The Kuonji family home was a grand western-style mansion with a long and storied history, stretching all the way back to England. You can see how massive this thing is. See the door at the bottom left, right? You see how small that door is? This mansion is massive. It was too small to be a dormitory, yet too big to be called a house. The main building contained as many as 3 normal houses worth of rooms, and was surrounded by a large, all-encompassing courtyard. The perimeter of the grounds was surrounded by a high, iron fence covered in thorny vines. There was also an annex to the main building. Given such extravagance, it was no wonder that it inspired rumors. To the town residents, the mere existence of such a lavish and out-of-place mansion on top of a hill was a cause for suspicion. Rumors, lies, and slander were the prices to be paid for fame. With only 2 lodgers, it was hard to disagree with the perception that vampires must be living here.
ま、私はともかく、アリスはそういうのやりかねないし。
I'm not one but Alice, but are they vampire? No, I mean, she's saying Alice, right? Because they said that this game is prequel to Tsukihime, right? I have not read Tsukihime, as I said, but yeah, ain't Tsuki, like Tsuki means vampire, right? I don't know, we'll see. She put her hand on the front door. It was a grand double door that would have paired well with a brass lock, and yet it was secured with a little more than a simple keyhole. Pushing it open with one hand, she entered the supposedly haunted house. And by the way, if vampires were not enough to scare you, ghosts were known to appear on certain nights. Much like the weather outside, the foyer was overcast with shades of gray. Perhaps by deliberate design, the architect had chosen not to include any lights in the entrance area. The ceiling was 2 floors high. The only light in the room came from the skylight. It was particularly gloomy on rainy days. On a moonless night, it was like the world itself ceased to be. Okay, let me turn the music a little bit louder. I don't know if it's just this music or because earlier it was quite loud, right? Well, let's turn it a little bit like this. Effects, it's stick effects like that. Aoko decided the drawing room to the east would be a good place to rest, but knowing that she would not be able to relax until she changed clothes, she started up the stairs. The stairs curled up the wall to the second floor hall. There was a third floor attic as well, accessible from the far end of the hall. She had never set foot in there in the 2 years she had lived there though. The Kuonji mansion was more or less divided into the two wings, east and west. Aoko had been given the entire east wing, but 2 rooms were more than enough as far as she was concerned. She had no desire to open a door that would trap you in a storybook world or lead to an attic that had only been used for storage this last 5 years. Aoko's room was at the end of the east wing's long corridor. She had elected for a smaller room for no other reason than that she thought it would be easier to clean. It was furnished with a large bed, her beloved mahogany desk, a wardrobe and chest for her clothes, and 2 9-shelf bookcases. What is two 9-shelf bookcases? That is all she brought with her from home. Her entire life of 16 years reduced to this. She borrowed the next room down for her own purposes.
そうだ。アリスにもらった見張りと壊れてないかチェックしないと。
She needed to see if the project she had been working on all night had borne fruit. The study next door served as proof of the life she had been living for the last year and how different that life was from the one she had lived before. It was not a room for the person she had been. It was not a room, or it was a room for the person she would eventually become. A place of solitude that only she could enter, or so she thought.
うわ、壊れてるどころか跡形もなく消え去ってる。やっぱ自己流アレンジはまだ早かったか。いいわよ。笑いなさいよ、コマ撮り。
Robin? Who's Robin? Oh, a bird Robin, okay. The nosy neighbor that had intruded upon her sanctuary flew away. While not exceptionally talented, Aoko did not lack for effort and was not afraid to fail. One could have almost mistaken her approach for optimism. Oh, is that a mirror? I thought it was a different person. She changed out of her uniform and returned to the first floor. Down the stairs, she opened the door to the east wing into the corridor as dark as a cellar. The absence of windows meant it was pitch black without the lights on, so she flicked the switch and entered the nearby doorway.
Denki no nai seikatsu ka. Souzou shitaku nai na.
True, yeah, that would be so hard, I'm not gonna lie. Like, for example, one day, we just lose every, electricity. That's gonna be so hard to adjust to, right? Because, yeah, we've been used to this. It had been her idea to update the drawing room. The walls were decorated with extravagant patterns, and around the room were large, majestic sofas, and a luxurious Persian rug. Amidst it all was a 30-inch television that seemed completely out of place. It stood looking over the other furniture, like the emperor with no clothes. The mansion's owner would rather done without it, but to a commoner like Aoko, it was an essential commodity. They had fought over its presence at first, but eventually came to an agreement and now mutually enjoyed this modern comfort.
なんだ、人のことは言えないか。うちも案外時代錯誤な家だった。
Now, in a somewhat pleasant mood, she decided to brew some tea. She boiled some water in the kitchen, prepared a teapot, and made herself some black tea. With a flop, she sank into the sofa. She took a sip of her tea and then another. Where's Alice? I need to see Alice. I guess it's morning right now, right? Or, yeah, maybe if she's a vampire, she will be coming later. When it's night. Lulled by the ticking of the clock, she took a third sip as she pondered how to spend her afternoon. The sofa almost seemed to be inviting her, and she sunk even further into its comforting embrace. She's there. Alice is there. Aoko blearily opened her eyes as she lifted her body up from the cushions. This was no dream or delusion. At some point, a girl sat down across from her. Not the least bit surprised as she reached for her teacup. But the tea within had gone completely cold.
寝てた。
She asked the question to the girl on the other side of the table.
ええ。
The girl answered without lifting her gaze. When silent, she could have been mistaken for a beautiful doll. The girl sitting on the opposite sofa was reading an old book. She had delicate limbs and pale white skin. Not a hint of humanity emanated from her melancholic aura. She had a darker hair than Aoko, and her icy eyes were focused on the pages in front of her. Her clothes resembled that of a nun, but were actually her school uniform. Honestly, she looks like Saber. Yeah, let's see when she opens her eyes. I mean, I guess the design for the characters are pretty similar from all the other series, right? In Aoko's humble opinion, the gloominess suited her. She evoked something like out of painting. There was something unreal about her, as if she was frozen in time. The white of her neck was so lovely that even Aoko found herself enchanted by it. The girl was one of the haunted house's 2 residents. Her name was Alice Konji, so okay. And she was the same age as Aoko.
私、どれくらい寝てた？
1時間と少し。ここで眠ると風邪ひくわよ。
Okay, let me lower it a little bit again. Sorry about checking the music. I'll try to fix it by next time. You can see sometimes it's loud, sometimes it's super low, like earlier, right? Alice answered indifferently, not that it bothered Aoko, who was now used to it. She looked at the clock on the wall and saw that it was already 7. She had been asleep for 2 hours. The day had been a rough one for her, and she had slept a little the night before, so it was no surprise that she had dozed off for as long as she had.
起こしてくれてもよかったのに。せっかくの紅茶が冷めちゃったじゃない。
私が来た時はもう冷めてたわ。
でしょうね。行ってみただけよ。
Aoko drank down the rest of the cold tea in one gulp. In the poorly heated Konji mansion, that was more than enough to clear her head and wake up.
こうなるとフォートナム&メイソンも何もないわね。おかえりアリス。玉の贅沢もあんた抜きじゃ閉まらないってことかしら。
And they like to keep their eyes closed in this episode today.
今日は薬日か天中殺か。ちょっと早いけどお参りってのも十分ありかもね。
Aoko shrugged her shoulders as if resigning herself to her fate.
それで何があったの？
After 2 years together, they knew each other quite well. Aoko had one way of asking questions, and Alice had another. Alice asked questions without raising her head, and Aoko gave her the details.
まず謝らなくちゃいけない。昨日徹夜で完成させた例のあれ、意味がなくなっちゃったのよ。ちょっと目を離した隙に沸騰しすぎて壊れちゃったみたい。そうならないよう循環のコードを 2,3 本外したり縫合したりしたんだけど。
Aoko tried to laugh it off as if it's someone else's problem.
どういうこと？
今朝休養が入って学校に呼び出し受けたの。そこで転入生の世話を押し付けられて一日が無残にも消費されちゃって、帰ってきたら跡形もなく消えてました。怒る？アリス。
別に青子の器物破損にいちいち怒っていたら一生分の口論をすることになるでしょ。代用品はあるからまた一から始めればいいわ。それより怒ってるのはあなたの方じゃないの？
Yeah, not really like Saber, more on, I just guess the face. The facial, what do you call this? The style of the face, right? But yeah, the eyes are so different though. It's so, look at her eyes, it's so dark. Alice was very much on point today. It was true that despite outward appearances, Aoko was seething with frustration. That aside,
この転入生っていうのがひどくずれててね。すごい山奥で暮らしてたらしくて、こっちの常識が通じないんだから。三問以下って言葉があるけど、あれって本当のことなのね、アリス。
Alice raised her head in response to hearing her name, but Aoko kept going on before she could get a word in edgewise. Aoko, after all, expected no sympathy in the first place.
初対面から尺に触るやつだったけど、教室を案内した時なんか失神しそうになったわ。そいつ、教室で教師と1対1で授業を受けるもんだと思ってたらしいの。それはそれでまだ流せる。許容範囲よ、あの程度の冗談は。で、私が簡潔かつ丁寧に教室の何たるかを教えた後で、そいつなんて言ったと思う？それで青崎、他の教室は何に使うんだ？ですって。教室に他も何もないでしょ？なんていうか、そいつは少しでも説明を怠るとそのままで納得しちゃうのよ。何も疑問に思わないというか、想像力が欠如してるっていうか、想像することに慣れてないっていうか。
I mean, as you said, he came from the mountain, so if, for example, there was a school there, right? It would have just been like, yeah, one building or just one classroom, right? So, yeah, the guy's curious.
まあ、一度言ったことはちゃんと分かってるっぽいからバカってわけじゃないんだけど。
あなたが人を批評するのは珍しいわね。 そういうダメな人気にするたちだったの？
みじんたりとも気にしないわよ。けど明日からどんな間違いをしでかすのかちょっと心配なだけ。
What she was really worried about was having to clean up that mess if it and when it happened. That had to be it. If not, it would mean that she had no real idea why she could not get him out of her head.
とにかく変なやつなの。案外アリスと気が合うかも。
三問一回はいい言葉ね。
But from her eyes, it was clear that the question of whether they would get along was irrelevant, given that they would never meet in the first place. Aoko gave a non-committal response.
ところでアリス、さっきから何読んでるの？
霊的進化論の二次創作、スピリチュアルダイアリのまがいもの。
ああ、スウェーデンボリー。そんなの今更読んでも仕方ないんじゃない？
新書なら退屈だけど、これは偽書だから。彼の欠点と長所を劇的に褒め上げている。よくできた冒険小説のようよ。立ちはだかる秘密組織の名前がカントとか気が利いているわ。筆跡はあなたのおじいさんのものだけど。
へえ、あの人そういう趣味まであったんだ。割とユーモアがあったのね。惜しい人を亡くしたわ。
Aoko seemed nostalgic over her now deceased grandfather.
あなたのおじいさん、夏に頼りをくれたけど。
よしてよ、死んだものと考えたいのに。
Aoko sighed and laid back on the sofa. The soft cushions caved in under her weight.
話は戻るけど。
Alice shot a glance at Aoko. She looks very serious right here. Her body buried in the sofa remained as still as a corpse. It was clear Aoko had tuned out of the conversation. Alice silently chastised her with her look. The more she thought about it, the less important the events of the day seemed to become. If she just had ignored Alice, the conversation would end there. They would eventually get up and leave today's mistake unresolved for another day. However, that's not the kind of person Aoko Aozaki was.
いいわよ。何？
She asked, still lying down.
今日できなかったのは少し痛いわね。
だから反省してるって。学校優先は一人前になってからでしょ。
ならいいけど。
The coldness in her voice made Aoko gnash her teeth. She knew what Alice wanted to say. She knew better than anyone. The veneer she wore for school was different than the way she lived at home. While it could be called hiding in plain sight, Alice thought it was silly. And what the silence told her was,
覚悟を決めろって言いたいのよね、あんたは。
today's failure was not a colossal one. She just happened to be upset at the delicate balance between her and home and school lives, chasing one at the expense of the other. And yet the carelessness mistake was a clear sign of Aoko's lack of commitment.
アリスは関係ない。これは私が私で決めなくちゃいけないこと。
She had only known for sure for the last year and a half, but she'd had a hunch for as long as she could remember. Make the choices and the day will come. It was little wonder that her morals and conscience had been stripped away. Aoko pushed herself back up. She was met by Alice's cold beauty and wordless gaze.
オッケー、ハリス。来週中に決着をつけよう。それでいいんでしょ？
Next week.
ええ、青子がいいなら。
Aoko could not help but shake her head, feeling like she was hearing something similar for the second time that day. Even in the comfort of her own, she couldn't banish thoughts of that country boy from her mind.
じゃあ、下準備はよろしくね。私まだできないし。
場所は例の公園でいい？
妥当な線ね。あ、でももう一軒の方は？
So what are they gonna do?
そっちの方が急務じゃない？
時と場合、森に変化があれば教えるわ。
After that brief exchange, Alice returned her attention to the book on her lap. Shop talk was over. Now they could return to their normal relationship as roommates. Aoko grabbed the remote and turned on the TV. Since Alice was busy reading, Aoko decided to tune in to a variety show that had already started. Alice started to speak but suddenly cut herself off. One of her delicate hands raised to her mouth. She would always cut herself off the second she realized she was about to say something trivial. Sometimes her self-restraint would hit too late and she would make a gesture like the one she was making now. It occurred to Aoko that the ah sound her cute little roommate made just now was different than the wah she blurted in times past.
何？
She's smiling now. Aoko turned down the volume in the TV, her eyes lit up like those mischievous cat.
どうということはないんだけど。
ないんだけど？
Look how happy she is. And then she looks like a cat right here. Alice looked away bashfully, not knowing if she would bring it up or not. It was times like these that her expression carried a real warmth and surprising charm. If he could see her in this moment, Alice's father would have to admit that her name suited her perfectly.
今日帰ってくるときおかしなものを見て誰かに話そうと思っていたんだけど。
Aoko nodded, beckoning her to continue.
つまらない、本当に意味のないことよ。けどどう考えてもそんなことをする理由がわからない。青子、人間ぐらいの大きな猫がひょこひょこ出前をする理由ってわかる
？For a second, Aoko thought Alice was trying and failing miserably to make a joke again. And now she's a little bit mad again. One would think that about anyone, really. But she seemed completely serious. Even if Alice's sense of humor has fell flat for Aoko, this story already had sounded more fanciful than Alice's usual attempt at jokes. Aoko concluded that her roommate was talking about something she had actually seen.
その話には2つぐらい信じがたい部分があるけど、1つずつ論破していい？
いいの。私もからくりぐらいは思いつくから。ただ理由がわからないから聞いてるの。わざわざ精巧な猫のぬいぐるみを着て出前のてんやものを届けに行くことってそんなに簡単かしらね。
難易度以前にそれをやる人間の常識性を疑うけどね、私は。
Alice nodded tentatively at her words.
まあ世の中いろいろあるから、私たちみたいなのもいれば下界から遮断された山奥で暮らしていたやつまで10人十色よ。私だったら見かけたら声かけて理由を尋ねただろうけど。
Alice's gaze drifted at that.
暮れゆく住宅街にさまよう出前猫か。背景が夕焼けだったらファンタジーだったでしょうに。で、今日の夕飯どうする？せっかく話が出たし、私らもてんやものにしようか。
Aoko loved getting takeout, and her face glowed as she spoke. They had no hard rules for dinner, but if one of them was in the mood to cook, they made it a point to make enough for two. At the very worst, this meant entire weeks without dinner, but the two of them agreed that this was a system that worked best for them. Whether they found cooking to be too much effort or simply liked ordering out, nights like this were a common occurrence, much to the chagrin of the restaurants of Mizaki Town. Delivering to the mansion meant coming all the way up to the top of this hill, the source of their disgruntlement.
時間は8時前。ギリギリセーフね。私今月がいいな。あそこの月見そば最近ご無沙汰だったし。
The hungry student council president took out their many menus and excitedly looked for anything that stood out. Alice casually responded without sparing so much as a glance.
悪いけど、私夕飯済んでるの。
Oh, she ate already. Like, yeah, look at it. It became black and white. Basically, her laughter, her happiness, it shattered. With those words, Aoko froze. All deliveries required a minimum of 2 items, so she was out of luck without an accomplice. Cruel society had decided it couldn't be bothered to deliver to a princess who only ordered a single serving of food. Then why don't you order 2, right? And then, yeah, maybe you, the other serving, eat it at breakfast, right? Oh my god. That's their house. So far away. I like how they're showing it as it to us, right? And they're pointing it in the yeah. This visual novel is quite funny as well. Yeah, I didn't expect it. Incidentally, to counteract orders from the Hilltop Mansion, the restaurants had declared the minimum number of orders will be 3 starting next year. Aoko and Alice were still in the dark to this fiendish change in direction.
この裏切り者だから帰ってくるのが遅かったのね。帰宅部、学校までバス徒歩込みで片道20分のあんたがなんで5時以降に帰ってくんのか考えるべきだったわ。
Unfortunately for Aoko, she had been too out of it to even remember that she was the one who'd fallen asleep.
ああ、ひどい女。そういう時は残された一人のためにお土産買ってくるのが暗黙の了解だったのに。私だってこの前の外食の時はアリスの分も買ってきたじゃない。
It was unknown how serious Aoko was being, but she was visibly angry. She had already woken up hungry that morning, and from the time she was called into school until now, she had consumed nothing but tea, so it was a small miracle that her stomach was not growling. She knew it was her own fault, but she persisted, wanting to get revenge on Alice for scolding her earlier.
この前ってあれのこと？あなたが都心に出向いた時、夕食にお寿司を食べてきたのに、お土産はなぜかコンビニエンスストアのビニール袋だったって話？
Aoko had kicked a hornet's nest.
何よ、買ってこないよりはマシでしょ。
真実は時に隠蔽すべきね。
Alice's icy gaze pierced right through her. Aoko had certainly crossed the line by going on and on about how the sushi circled around the restaurant while Alice ate her convenience store meal. But new things fascinated her, and she couldn't contain her curiosity towards the conveyor belt sushi shops that started popping up at a time. They were nothing short of miraculous. Even honesty can be a sin given the right circumstances.
わかった。わかりました。じゃあ今回のは前のと帳消しってことでいいわね。
But I've seen a lot of videos of that. Like, yeah, the rotating, I guess the plates going around, right? So how do you pay for that though? Do you pay per plate, or do you pay, for example, one payment and then you can eat all you can, right? I don't know how that works. I've never been to a place like that. Alice went back to her book without so much as recognizing the question. The fact that she did not confirm it made Aoko anxious.
仕方ない。今日は薬日だし、おとなしく台所に立って料理の腕を磨くとしましょう。
She stood up, announcing her intent to no one in particular.
あ、聞き忘れてた。アリス、どこで夕食済ませたの？
Okay, let me guess. She's gonna say in the sushi restaurant. Alice's hand froze on her current page. She suddenly shut the book she was reading and stood up as if it at wit's end. She walked across the drawing room with her book in hand. When she reached the door, she stopped and turned toward Aoko.
聞きたい。
まあ、なんとなく。
Aoko nodded timidly, cowed by Alice's sudden vigor. Alice continued in her matter-of-fact way.
その猫が余ったメニューをくれたのよ。
The cat gave me one of his leftover deliveries. And with that brief response, she left the room. So, I'm thinking she's saying the cat is our boy, right? Sojiro. Maybe. Little happening of last night. So what is this? So we guess save in next episode. So I guess we finished episode 1 or episode prologue. Archive. What do we have here? What is this? Oh, so this is the name? Also, this is like chapters, I guess. Cats and mistakes, stars and death. Okay. So what is this? 7 days of spinning. Chapter 1.5. Oh, okay, we gotta read this. Okay, we'll check this out. We'll check that out next episode. I mean, so do you get always? Do you get stuff like that every time? Like every time we finish an episode, we'll get something in the archive? I mean, that would be nice though, right? Extra stuff, right? Chapter 1.5. But honestly, this visual novel it's fun, yeah. I mean, nothing really happened that much, I guess. We met our roommate, or Aoko's roommate, right? And yeah, it was, what do you call this? This visual novel is just, it's nice to read, nice to listen to. I don't know the word, how to say it, but like, yeah, it's just good. It's I guess we're in the beginning, right? So kind of like slice of life a moment still, right? I mean, visual novels are quite slow all the time, I guess. Every single visual novel that I read, always it's slow in the beginning and then it ramps up later on, right? But for this one, even though it's slow like this, I like it. I like the story, the music, the characters are nice to see, and yeah, it's just good. It's just good. So I guess let's see what happens next time. Let's check out chapter 1.5, right? There's quite a lot of them. There were like 4 chapters, right? So yeah, we'll just see. So we're gonna continue this and do more on Witch on the Holy Night in the next one. So I'll just see you then, guys. Bye bye.